People often claim a woman's instincts never lie, though I sometimes wished mine had betrayed me. I'm Catherine, 46 years old, married to Marcus for over 2 decades. One evening, as dusk slipped through the kitchen window, I stood over a basket of clothes, folding in silence. The house, though large, seemed emptied of life, too still for a place that had once overflowed with chatter and laughter. Through the glass, I watched autumn leaves scatter while the muffled sound of a neighbor's TV carried faintly across the walls. That night, Marcus was off at training again. What began 6 months earlier as 2 sessions each week had stretched to 3, then nearly every day. "I need to get fit again, Catherine," he told me once, patting the slight curve at his midsection. "Time isn't on my side." At 48, he remained striking. Broad shoulders, silver threading his dark hair, and the same easy assurance that had caught my attention back in college. Yet the patterns unsettled me. The way he hurried straight into the shower on returning, the unfamiliar cologne clinging to his car, the gym bag he handled with such care, never letting me near it, always carrying it directly into the bedroom. That evening, my suspicion outweighed hesitation. I opened the black leather bag he had left near the door. Inside lay fresh workout gear with no trace of sweat, unopened energy bars, and hidden beneath a towel, a small packet of condoms beside a bottle of Viagra. My hands shook as I gripped them, not out of rage, which would follow later, but from the heavy certainty pressing down on me, a pain radiating outward from my stomach until even my fingertips throbbed. It had been 4 months since we last shared any intimacy. Marcus insisted it was because of job pressures or the exhaustion from his workout schedule. I believed him, even blaming myself for craving more closeness. But that night clarified everything. Our bedroom wasn't a space for affection anymore, only for sleep. I folded the incriminating items back into the towel, tucked them neatly where they had been, closed the zipper, and returned the bag to its spot. Then I sat at the kitchen table, my eyes fixed on the ceramic fruit bowl his mother had gifted us for our 10th anniversary, and I started to plan. During the following 2 weeks, I turned into an investigator of my own marriage. One clue after another appeared, small at first, then overwhelming. Receipts from Romano's, the restaurant we reserved for special dates, showing dinners for 2 on nights he'd sworn he was at the gym. One bill read $127.50 for food I never ate. His car carried the faint trace of a perfume that didn't belong to me, floral and youthful, nothing like the refined fragrances I usually wore. Beneath the passenger seat, I discovered a tissue smeared with lipstick several shades bolder than any color I owned. Calls came in that fell silent the instant I entered the room. "Work business," he muttered each time. His coworkers rarely made him grin the way those secret phone voices did. Then came the credit card bills, charges from lingerie shops, florists, and the Meridian Hotel downtown, 3 separate times. $89 spent on roses I never saw, $156 on silk I never touched, $220 for hotel nights I never shared. What cut deepest was the seamless normalcy of everything else. Marcus still pressed a kiss to my forehead each morning, still asked about my day while we ate dinner, still sat with me on the couch as if nothing had changed. He had perfected the art of partitioning his life, slicing betrayal away from routine with almost clinical skill. Yet I realized I could separate parts of myself as well. At a pharmacy, I picked up a syringe, casually telling the cashier it was for my diabetic cat. At the farmer's market, I chose the hottest chilies I could find, and from a health food store, I bought a small bottle of pure capsaicin oil. That evening, while Marcus was supposedly training, I extracted the fiery liquid and began assembling my plan. The task demanded care. Each condom had to be punctured with precision, not at the tip, where damage might be spotted, but discreetly along the side, the needle's trace invisible to the eye. I injected just enough of the burning mixture to coat the inside without changing how the condom looked. Afterward, I sealed the packages so neatly it might have impressed a medical professional. The bitter humor of it struck me. After 23 years of marriage, I had finally mastered deception. 2 days later, Marcus mentioned he had another training session. "Big workout tonight," he said, brushing his lips against my cheek, lips that had likely touched someone else only hours before. "Don't wait up." I stood at the window and watched him walk out with his gym bag before settling in for the wait. I brewed a cup of tea, opened a book, and tried to occupy my mind, though anxiety and a grim anticipation wrestled inside me like two animals locked in combat. At 9:47 p.m., my phone lit up. Marcus's name glowed on the screen. "Catherine." His voice cracked with panic. There's been an accident. I'm at Mercy General Hospital." "What happened? Are you okay?" I asked. "It's difficult to explain. Can you come, please?" The drive felt unreal. A part of me feared he might truly be hurt. Another part knew with certainty what had occurred, and a dark satisfaction rose in me. Yet mostly, I felt nothing. 2 decades and 3 years of marriage were collapsing under the harsh glare of an emergency ward, and I had set it all in motion. Mercy General's sterile lights washed every face a sickly shade. The air reeked of antiseptic layered over despair. At the front desk, a weary receptionist pointed me toward room 237. As I neared the doorway, a voice carried out. Not Marcus's, but one I knew instantly. My chest clenched. "The burning won't stop," the woman was saying. "We tried ice, we tried milk, nothing works." That voice was unmistakable. I'd heard it around my own dining table, at Christmas mornings, and during birthday celebrations. It was the voice of someone who had been calling me Mom for the last 3 years. Jennifer, my son's wife. I pushed the door open. The sight waiting inside was both exactly what I had imagined and still utterly shattering. Marcus lay on one bed, face flushed, drenched in sweat, a damp towel pressed against his lap. On the other side of the room sat Jennifer, dressed in a hospital gown, tears streaking her cheeks. She was the mother of my 2 grandchildren. Both of them turned their eyes toward me. Marcus's face collapsed into guilt. Jennifer's widened in panic. "Catherine, I can explain," Marcus began. "No," I replied evenly, slipping a hand into my purse. "I don't think you can." The crisp crackle of paper filled the room as I unfolded the divorce documents I had drawn up earlier that day. For 2 weeks I had carried them, waiting for the right occasion. Now the moment had arrived. The silence that followed was suffocating. The constant hum of the hospital, machines beeping, voices murmuring, the squeak of wheels against linoleum, seemed to disappear into nothing. "Mrs. Williams?" came a voice from the doorway. I turned to see Dr. Sarah Chen, dressed in scrubs, clipboard in hand. She was a friend from my book club. Her gaze flicked from Marcus to Jennifer and finally to me. Recognition settled on her face like a shadow. "Sarah called me," I said, into the heavy stillness. "ChatGPT Skazal. I'll give you some privacy," Sarah said softly. "The burning should ease within a few hours after the treatment we administered. Physically, you'll both recover." When the door closed behind her, I dragged the single visitor's chair up to Marcus's bedside and sat down. My hands didn't tremble. My tone was steady. For the first time in months, I felt absolute control. 23 years, I said to Marcus. I gave you 23 years of loyalty, care, and affection. I raised your children, kept our house running, backed your career, and this is what I get in return. Catherine, please. I'm not done. Even to my own ears, the edge in my voice was startling. I turned to Jennifer. And you? You called me Mom. You sat at my table every Sunday for 3 years. You let me look after your children while you did this. You hugged me at Christmas while plotting to destroy my marriage. Jennifer dissolved into tears. I never meant for it to happen. We didn't. We didn't plan it. You didn't plan it? I shot back. You've been at the Meridian Hotel for 2 months. You've eaten dinner at Romano's 6 times. Marcus bought you lingerie from Vivian's boutique. Which part of that wasn't planned? Each fact landed like a blow. I could see it in their faces, the dawning realization of how much I knew, how long I had been watching, how thoroughly I had catalogued their deceit. How long have you known? Marcus finally asked. Long enough to make choices about my own life, choices that don't involve either of you, I said. I picked up the divorce papers and set them firmly in Marcus's hands. This marriage is finished. I've already consulted an attorney. The house is mine, my parents' inheritance. The retirement accounts will be divided according to state law. You can keep your gym membership. Marcus stared at the documents as though they were written in an unfamiliar script. Catherine, we can fix this. Counseling, therapy. Some things can't be fixed, Marcus. Some betrayals go too deep. I rose from the chair and faced both of them. In 15 minutes, I'm calling Michael to let him know his wife is here. How much of the truth you give him is your choice, but he's going to know something, and tomorrow morning I'm changing the locks. Jennifer's tears turned into open sobs. Please, Catherine, think of the children. Think of the family. I am thinking of the family, I said. I'm thinking about how you destroyed it. The walk from room 237 to the hospital lobby stretched out like a mile. My footsteps echoed along the sterile corridor, blending with the steady beeps of medical machines and the low murmur of nurses on the night shift. In the family waiting area, I found a quiet corner and dialed my son, Michael. The phone rang 4 times before his tired voice came through. Mom, it's almost 11. Is everything okay? Michael, I need you to come to Mercy General Hospital, room 237. What? Are you hurt? Is Dad? We're all fine physically, but there's something you need to see. Mom, you're scaring me. What's happening? I closed my eyes. How does a mother tell her child that his wife has been unfaithful? How do you explain that the affair was with his own father? Jennifer is here, at the hospital. She's here with your father. They were together when they both got hurt. The silence on the line stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Together, how? His tone was no longer sleepy. It was sharp, cold. Together in the kind of way that ends marriages, Michael. I'm sorry. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The call ended abruptly. I sat back in the hard plastic chair, watching the late-night chaos of the emergency department play out. A teenager cradled a broken arm while his anxious parents hovered. An older woman broadcast her chest pains to anyone who would listen. A young couple sat entwined, waiting for word after their car crash. Around me, people grappled with real crises, while I sat in the fallout of one I had engineered myself. Yet regret never came, only an unexpected calm. 22 minutes later, Michael rushed through the sliding doors. At 25, he was almost a mirror of his father, the same sharp jawline, the same piercing eyes. But unlike Marcus, who had mastered the mask of a polished smile, Michael's face revealed everything he felt. Confusion, rage, sorrow, all visible at once. Where are they? He demanded. I led him to room 237. Through the narrow glass pane in the door, we saw Marcus and Jennifer. Neither spoke. They sat apart on their beds, eyes fixed on opposite walls, both smothered under the gravity of what they had done. Michael pushed the door open without hesitation. Jen? He whispered. Jennifer's head snapped up. When she saw her husband, a raw expression crossed her face, the truest emotion she had shown all night. Pure, crushing remorse. Michael, Is it true? He looked from her to Marcus, then back again. Are you two? They stayed silent, and that silence was all the answer he needed. Michael's fists tightened at his sides. How long? Son, Marcus began. How long? Michael's voice rose, loud enough to draw glances from the nurse's station. 4 months, Jennifer admitted in a whisper. Michael's head moved slowly, like his body was trying to catch up with his mind. Then he turned toward Marcus. You son of a bitch, Marcus recoiled. Michael, please, let me explain. Explain what? Michael's voice was rising now, each word sharper than the last. How you've been sleeping with my wife. How you've been lying to Mom. How you've been lying to me. Mr. Williams. Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway, calm but firm. I need to ask you to lower your voice. This is a hospital. Sorry, Michael muttered, still glaring at his father. I'm just trying to figure out how my dad became the kind of man who destroys his own family. Then he turned on Jennifer. And you. You sat at Mom's table last Sunday. You helped Emma make Mother's Day cards for her grandmother. You looked my mother in the eye and smiled while you were doing all this." Jennifer broke down again, but the sobs were different now, raw, stripped of pretense, the sound of someone who had lost everything and was only starting to grasp the depth of it. "Where are the kids?" Michael demanded. "At your mom's," Jennifer said between gulps of air. "Your mother's watching them tonight." Michael let out a humorless laugh. "Perfect. So, my children are with the only decent person in this disaster, while their parents are here getting treated for— What exactly? What happened to you two?" I stepped forward. ChatGPT Skazal. "That's my fault." All three faces turned toward me. Then I said it plainly. I doctored the condoms with chili oil. I had known about their liaison for weeks. That night was my method of ensuring they would face repercussions. Michael stared a long moment before a laugh escaped him, not joyful, but the kind of absurd edges of hysteria noise people make when everything feels unbearably unreal. He blurted, incredulous, "You set them up?" I answered that I had protected myself, and him too, whether he realized it or not. When he demanded how, I slipped a manila envelope from my bag and handed it over. Inside were the private investigator's findings: photographs, credit card logs, hotel bills, the documentation any divorce lawyer would need. A month and a half after that night, I was in my attorney's office signing the divorce papers for good. Marcus moved out the day following the hospital incident. He left a string of voicemails, some apologetic, some angry, some pleading, which I listened to only briefly before blocking his number. The settlement favored me reasonably, perhaps even generously. I retained the house, my parents' wedding gift to us from 23 years ago, and half of our retirement accounts. Marcus walked away with his pension and his liberty. It felt like a fair exchange. Michael and Jennifer's divorce, however, was far more complicated. She hired a high-priced lawyer who tried to argue her infidelity was the result of postpartum depression and a momentary lapse in sanity. But Michael's attorney, bolstered by the evidence I had gathered, easily demonstrated that 4 months of calculated deceit could hardly be considered temporary. Custody was awarded primarily to Michael, with weekends and holidays allotted to Jennifer. She moved back in with her parents on the other side of town and found work at a dental office. A mutual acquaintances mentioned she had started therapy, searching for answers about why she had sabotaged her own life. I took no pleasure in her unraveling, nor in Marcus's retreat to a small apartment downtown. My satisfaction was quieter, rooted not in revenge, but in self-preservation. It was the contentment of a woman who refused to be powerless. "All done," my lawyer said, sliding the paperwork across his polished mahogany desk. "You're officially Catherine Williams again. For convenience, I chose to keep Marcus's surname. Bank accounts, credit cards, the ease of recognition for my grandchildren. But legally, I was unbound. Outside the office, autumn had surrendered to winter. Bare trees stretched their limbs against a pale December sky. I walked to my car at an unhurried pace, filling my lungs with the cold air. My phone buzzed, a message from Michael. "Dinner tonight? Kids want to see Grandma." I smiled as I typed back, "I'll cook." 6 p.m. Preparing a meal for my son and grandchildren carried a new meaning now. It wasn't duty or a bid for approval. It was a gift, freely chosen, for the people I cherished. And that difference mattered. At home, I set about making Emma's favorite chicken parmesan and the garlic bread David adored. The kitchen filled with the warmth of food and memory. But for the first time in months, the space didn't feel empty. As the chicken baked, I uncorked a bottle of good wine, not the bargain labels I used to settle for, back when I believed I wasn't worth more. With a glass in hand, I stood at the kitchen window, gazing out over the garden I had planted last spring. The roses lay dormant, but I knew they would return in bloom when the weather shifted. Some things endure the winter. Some things grow stronger after enduring darkness. When Michael arrived with the children, Emma came running, throwing her little arms around my legs. "Grandma, Daddy said Mommy and Grandpa went away. Are they coming back for Christmas?" I knelt so we were eye to eye. Her gaze was a mirror of her father's at that age. Sometimes adults make mistakes that change everything, sweetheart, but the people who truly love you will always be here. Will you read me a story after dinner? She asked. I'd love to, I said. At the table, David, older by 2 years, posed a more difficult question. Dad says Mommy hurt you. Is that why she can't live with us anymore? Michael opened his mouth to step in, but I lifted a hand to stop him. These children deserved honesty. Truth softened to fit their ages, but truth nonetheless. Your mommy made choices that hurt our whole family, I told them gently. Sometimes when people hurt each other very badly, they can't keep living together, but that doesn't mean she doesn't love you, and it doesn't mean anyone did anything wrong. Did Grandpa make bad choices too? David asked. Yes, I said quietly. He did. Are you sad? I thought about it. I was very sad, but now I'm more relieved. After dinner, Michael and I stood side by side at the sink, washing and drying while the children played in the living room. How are you really doing, Mom? He asked. Better than I expected. Worse than I'd hoped. But okay, I admitted. I keep thinking I should have seen it, should have known. Michael, look at me. I waited until he met my eyes. This isn't your fault. Your wife and your father made decisions that destroyed your family. You were being a loving husband and son. There's no shame in that. Are you angry with me for not protecting you? He asked softly. The question cracked something in my chest. Oh, sweetheart. You don't protect me. I protect myself. That's what I've learned from all this, that I'm stronger than I knew. That night, after Michael and the kids went home, I filled the tub with hot water and allowed myself to think about what lay ahead. For the first time in 23 years, I could go anywhere, do anything, become anyone I chose. The woman who had opened that gym bag 6 weeks earlier had been terrified of being alone. The woman in the bathtub was beginning to see solitude as freedom. By March, I had begun to build new routines. ChatGPT Skazal, I began taking morning walks through the neighborhood, noticing details that had escaped me for years. The way Mrs. Henderson's daffodils always bloomed ahead of the others, the delicate scrollwork on the old Victorian railings, the cozy little coffee shop that had appeared just 2 blocks away while I was occupied with being a wife. I finally joined the library's book club, something I'd long wanted but never found time for when Marcus's schedule dictated my evenings. I signed up for a pottery class at the community college. I started volunteering with a children's literacy program, reading picture books to kindergartners who thought I was extraordinary simply because I could make the stories sparkle. The house itself felt transformed, lighter even though emptier. I'd redone the master bedroom, trading the dark burgundy curtains Marcus had insisted on for airy white linen that let sunlight pour in. I removed the television altogether, turning the room back into a sanctuary for sleep and books. Michael brought Emma and David over every Sunday, and Jennifer picked them up midweek after school. We'd managed to create a civil routine centered on the children's needs. Jennifer and I rarely exchanged more than a few words, but when we did, the tone was polite. I had no urge to exact further punishment. Her own decisions had already written her sentence. ChatGPT Skazal, Marcus had made several attempts to reach me through mutual friends, requests to talk, to apologize, to offer explanations or patchwork solutions. But I wasn't interested. Some betrayals cut so deep they leave no space for forgiveness, and I'd long since stopped needing either his remorse or his reasons. One Wednesday in early April, as I left the pottery studio, with my fingers still faintly streaked in clay, I quite literally collided with someone outside the coffee shop. "I'm so sorry," I said, looking up at a man about my age, kind-eyed, with silver at his temples. "I wasn't watching where I was going." "No harm done," he replied easily. "Beautiful evening for a walk." He was right. The air was soft and warm without being heavy, and the scent of blooming cherry trees drifted together with the aroma of fresh coffee from the shop behind us. "Are you Catherine Williams from the book club?" he asked. "I'm David Martinez. I've been thinking about joining, but wasn't sure if it might be too intimidating for someone who mostly reads military history. I laughed. We just finished a lively debate over whether Jane Austen was a secret feminist or simply a great storyteller. I think you'd fit right in. Would you like to grab a coffee and tell me more about it? I promise I won't bore you with Civil War trivia, he said, smiling. I paused, not out of reluctance, but from the sudden awareness that my time was now mine to use however I wanted. His smile was warm, and I felt drawn to it. I'd like that, I said. Over coffee that lingered into dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant nearby, I found out David had once been a high school principal. He was retired now, a widower after 41 years of marriage. His wife had died of cancer a year and a half earlier, and he was still piecing together what it meant to live alone. It's strange, he said, gently circling the wine in his glass. I was married so long, I forgot what it meant to just be David, not David and Maria. Sometimes I still catch myself setting two places at the table or picking up her favorite yogurt at the store without realizing it. I nodded, understanding. I'm discovering I enjoy having the whole bed to myself, and I can read until 2 in the morning if I feel like it, without anyone complaining about the light. What happened to your marriage, if you don't mind me asking? By then, I'd repeated the story so often, to attorneys, to my therapist, to friends in book club, that it no longer hurt to tell it. My husband had an affair with my daughter-in-law. I found out, divorced him, and realized I'd rather be alone than live with someone who didn't respect me. David grimaced. That's brutal. I'm sorry. Don't be, I said. It turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to me. He raised his eyebrows. How do you mean? Because it made me figure out who I was without him, and it turns out I like her quite a lot. We talked until the staff began stacking chairs on tables around us. David walked me to my car after dinner, and we agreed to go to the next book club meeting together. Driving back through the quiet streets of my neighborhood, I felt something that had been absent for years, a flicker of real anticipation about the days ahead. In May, a letter arrived from Marcus, not a text or an email, but a handwritten note on the expensive stationery he always reserved for important messages. I nearly tossed it in the trash unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. Catherine, it began, I know you don't want to hear from me, and I understand why. What I did was unforgivable, and I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I'm writing because I need to say some things I should have said months ago. You were the best wife a man could ask for. Loyal, generous, intelligent, and beautiful. You supported my ambitions, raised our children, and turned our house into a home. The affair had nothing to do with anything you lacked. It had everything to do with what I lacked: character, integrity, and the wisdom to value what I had. Jennifer means nothing to me. She never did. She was simply there and willing, and I was foolish enough to confuse excitement with happiness. I threw away 23 years of marriage for something that wasn't even real. I hear through Michael that you're doing well. I'm glad. You deserve happiness, and you deserve better than I ever gave you. I'm not the same man who betrayed you. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand how I became someone capable of such cruelty. But I know self-reflection doesn't erase harm, and I'm not asking for another chance. I just need you to know that I understand what I lost. I hope one day you'll remember the good years without bitterness. We had good years, Catherine. 20 of them at least. I hope I didn't destroy those memories for you. Marcus. I read his words twice before placing the letter on the kitchen table and putting the kettle on. Outside the window, my rose bushes had opened fully, their blossoms turned toward the afternoon light. The letter was likely sincere. Marcus had always been skilled with language when he chose to be, and this time the tone sounded honest rather than manipulative. But sincerity didn't alter the truth. No apology, however carefully crafted, could erase what he had done. Knowing his reasons didn't heal the scars left behind. I folded the paper neatly and tucked it into the drawer where I kept significant documents. Not because it was precious, but because it marked a finality. Marcus had spoken his piece, and I had received it. Now there was no unfinished business lingering between us, no words left unsaid. That night, David and I went to the community theater to see Our Town. During intermission, as people milled about with plastic cups of wine, he leaned toward me. "Are you enjoying it?" "It's making me think about time," I said. "How much of it we waste waiting for life to start, or for other people to make us happy." "Are you happy now?" he asked, the bluntness catching me off guard. "Yes," I said, and in that moment realized it was true. Not the kind of happy I imagined at 46, but real happiness. "What's changed?" "I live for myself now instead of orbiting someone else. I make choices based on what I want, not what's expected. And I've learned the difference between being alone and being lonely." "And which are you?" "Alone," I answered. "And I like it." David smiled. "Good. That makes you far better company than someone who needs others to feel whole." After the show, we strolled through downtown, talking about everything and nothing. Being with David felt easy. No hidden motives, no games, no manipulation. Just a good man who liked my company and could make me laugh. When he walked me to my door, I felt a pull toward him. Not the frantic, consuming kind of desire that had marked my early years with Marcus, but a calm, self-assured interest, the kind that belonged to a woman who understood her own value. "Would you like to come in for coffee?" I asked. "I'd love to," he said, "but I think I'll say goodnight instead." I lifted an eyebrow. "Afraid of my coffee?" I teased. "Afraid of rushing something that might be worth taking slowly," he replied. I liked that answer more than I expected. By September, I was celebrating my 47th birthday, which also marked a year since I'd uncovered Marcus's affair. The symmetry struck me. What had once been the darkest day of my life had turned into a milestone of freedom. Michael organized a party in my backyard, inviting my book club friends, pottery classmates, and neighbors I'd grown close to over the past year. David arrived with sunflowers. He said they reminded him of my smile, and a first edition of Pride and Prejudice, proof that he'd been paying attention when I once mentioned my love for Austen. Emma and little David helped me blow out the candles on a rich chocolate cake Michael had picked up from the downtown bakery. As I closed my eyes to make a wish, it hit me that I didn't need to. For the first time in years, I already had everything I wanted. When the party ended and Michael took the kids home, David stayed behind to help tidy up. We moved around the kitchen quietly, slipping past each other with the unspoken rhythm of two people who had already shared many evenings together. "Good party," David said as he dried the last wine glass. "I never thought I'd enjoy being the center of attention, but it was fun. You seem different tonight, lighter." I paused, considering his observation. "A year ago today, I found out my husband was cheating on me. I thought my life was over. And now? Now I think it was just beginning." David set the towel down and turned toward me. "Catherine, there's something I want to ask you." My pulse quickened. In the 6 months we'd been seeing each other, David had been endlessly patient, kind, steady, and never once pushing me further than I wanted to go. We'd shared dinners, movies, long walks, and deep talks, but nothing beyond what I was ready to give. "What is it?" I asked. "I'm falling in love with you. Actually, I think I already have. And I want to know if there's any chance you might feel the same." His words lingered between us, warm and steady. A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be standing in my kitchen hearing a good man confess his love, I'd have thought they were insane. A year ago, I was still clinging to a marriage that had already died. "David, you don't have to answer now," he said softly. "I just wanted you to know how I feel." "I do feel the same way," I said quietly, "but I need you to understand something." I met his eyes. "I love you, but I don't need you. I'm not looking for someone to complete me or rescue me or fix my life. I'm looking for someone to share the life I've already built." His smile lit up the room. "That's exactly the kind of love I want," he said. We kissed there in my kitchen, surrounded by all the small markers of the life I'd built on my own, the pottery I'd shaped, the the books stacked on the counter, the flowers from my garden in a vase by the window. It tasted like possibility and felt like finding my way back to myself. Later that night, after David went home to his own house, we were still taking things slowly after all. I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine and thought about how strange the past year had been. The woman who'd unzipped that gym bag had been shattered, furious, and terrified. She'd felt like a victim of something she couldn't control. The woman on this porch was none of those things. She was self-reliant, steady, and, to her surprise, happy. Marcus's betrayal had been a gift he would never recognize. It had forced me to discover who Catherine Williams was without being Marcus's wife, Michael's mother, or anyone else's anything. And it turned out she was someone I genuinely liked. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Thanks for a great party, Mom. Dad called today." I typed back, "What did he want? To know if you were happy. I told him you're the happiest I've ever seen you." I smiled and slid the phone aside. Let Marcus wonder about the shape of my happiness. Let him imagine all the things his absence had made room for. I had far better things to focus on. The book club meeting on Tuesday, where we'd be discussing eat, pray, love, and I'd finally have something genuine to add about rediscovering yourself after loss. The pottery class on Thursday, where I was at last mastering the art of centering clay on the wheel. David, who loved me not out of need, but because he appreciated who I was at my truest. And my grandchildren, who were learning by watching me that adults can recover, that misfortune can lead to renewal, and that sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well. Sitting there in the dark of my backyard, surrounded by the rose bushes I'd planted and nurtured, I realized Marcus had been wrong in his letter. We hadn't had 20 good years. We'd had 20 years in which I shrank myself to fit his needs, mistaking obligation for love and submission for partnership. This past year had been my first truly good year in decades, and tomorrow promised to be even better. 2 years later. The wedding was small and intimate, just family and close friends gathered under the oak tree that had shaded my backyard for half a century. Emma scattered rose petals along a makeshift aisle, and David, my grandson, carried the rings on a tiny velvet pillow with great solemnity. I wore a simple cream dress I had chosen for no one's approval but my own. David looked striking in a navy suit, the silver in his hair catching the soft afternoon sun as it filtered through the oak leaves overhead. Michael walked by my side, not to hand me over, but as a gesture of support for my decision to begin a new chapter. When he kissed my cheek before taking his seat in the front row, I caught the glimmer of tears in his eyes. "You look beautiful, Mom," he whispered. "You look free." The ceremony itself was brief, no more than 15 minutes. David and I had written our own vows, promises to love without erasing ourselves, to encourage each other's independence, and to create something new together rather than trying to replace what we had both lost. When the justice of the peace declared us husband and wife, David's kiss was steady and tender. From the small gathering, I noticed my book club friends dabbing their eyes, my pottery instructor grinning like a proud parent, and Mrs. Henderson from down the block snapping photos with her phone. Marcus and Jennifer were conspicuously absent. Michael had wrestled with the idea of inviting his father, but I had spared him the struggle. "This day is about moving forward," I told him. "Your father belongs to the past." The reception was simple and heartfelt. A potluck spread laid out on long tables beneath string lights strung between the trees. Sarah, my book club friend, brought her legendary lasagna. David's daughter had driven up from Atlanta, bringing a homemade tiramisu that disappeared within minutes. As the sun went down, the children darted across the yard with sparklers, their laughter weaving through the hum of adult voices, people who had chosen to celebrate love instead of fear. Later that night, after the last guest had gone and the kids were asleep in the guest room for their Grandma and Grandpa David sleepover, we settled onto the porch swing he'd hung the previous spring. "Any regrets?" David asked, slipping an arm around my shoulders. "Only that I waited so long to discover who I really was." "And who is that?" I considered the question carefully. "Someone who doesn't need to be needed. someone who can love without losing herself, someone who understands the difference between being good and being useful. I love all of those someones, he said, even when I'm stubborn and independent and refuse to let you open jars for me, especially then. We fell into a comfortable silence, watching the last of the evening light dissolve into the sky. In the distance, the fountain in my garden murmured, the one I'd bought with part of my divorce settlement, back when I was just learning how to spend money on things that made me happy. "What are you thinking about?" David asked. "Marcus." I felt him stiffen slightly. Even after 2 years of marriage, my first husband was still a sensitive topic. "Not the way you think," I added quickly. "I was thinking about how grateful I am to him." "Grateful?" David tilted his head. "He broke my heart so completely I had to rebuild it stronger. He wrecked my life so thoroughly I had no choice but to create a better one. He showed me so clearly what I didn't want that I could recognize what I did want when I found it. So you're saying I should send him a thank you note?" I laughed. "Maybe we both should." The truth was, I hadn't thought of Marcus in months. Last I'd heard, he was dating a woman from his office, someone closer to Jennifer's age than mine. I felt no jealousy, no anger, not even curiosity about whether it would last longer than his affair. Marcus belonged to a version of me that no longer existed. The woman who'd found those condoms 3 years ago had defined herself by other people's needs. The woman sitting on this porch swing had learned how to be whole on her own, and now chose to share that wholeness with someone who valued it. "Do you want to know a secret?" I asked. "Always," David said. "Sometimes I feel guilty for being this happy, like I should still be angry or bitter or broken." "And what do you think when you feel that way?" "That happiness isn't something you earn by suffering. It's something you choose when you decide you deserve it." David kissed the top of my head. "Remind me to share that with my daughter," David said. "She's been stuck in a bad marriage for 5 years, convinced that leaving would mean she failed. Maybe she just needs to stumble on a pair of condoms in a gym bag." "David Martinez," I teased, "are you suggesting your son-in-law should cheat on her?" "Of course not," I smiled. "I'm suggesting that sometimes people need a push to make the changes they're afraid of, and if the push doesn't come, they have to give it to themselves." Later, as we got ready for bed in the master bedroom, I had redecorated twice, once to erase Marcus, and once again to welcome David. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was 49, with silver glints threading through her brown hair and laugh lines etched at the corners of her eyes. She looked assured, content, and utterly at ease in her own skin. She no longer resembled the woman who had once been Marcus Williams's wife. She looked exactly like the woman David Martinez had fallen in love with. "What's that smile about?" David asked, stepping out of the bathroom in his pajamas. I was just thinking, revenge really is a dish best served cold. "Oh? And what was your revenge?" "Living well, being happy, refusing to let his betrayal turn me into someone bitter or broken." "That's not revenge, Catherine," David said gently. "That's wisdom." "Sometimes it's the same thing," I replied. That night, lying beside my husband in the bed I had chosen, in the home I had reclaimed, surrounded by the life I'd rebuilt from the ruins of my first marriage, I thought about the women who might someday read my story. Some would be finding their own versions of condoms in gym bags. Some would stumble on unexplained credit card statements or phone calls that cut off the moment they entered the room. Some women might be living through the quiet unraveling of respect and intimacy, the slow signals of a marriage already ending. To them, I would say this: you are stronger than you think. You are worth more than what you've been given. And sometimes the moment that shatters you is also the one that frees you, if you're willing to save yourself. You must be willing to discover who you are apart from the roles others expect you to fill. You must be willing to choose yourself. The chili oil was only the start. The true revenge was transforming into someone who could never be broken again, not because she refused to trust, but because her greatest trust was in herself. And if you, Marcus, ever find these words somehow, thank you. You proved I could endure anything. You revealed that I had more resilience than I ever imagined. You pushed me to see what I was made of. It turns out I am steel, wrapped in silk, with a foundation of unwavering self-respect. That is a gift, even if you never intended to give it.